Thank you everyone for attending today's Facebook Live with Linda Neuman from Aeglea. Linda is the Chief Medical Officer at Aeglea. Dr. Linda Neuman began her career as an internist in practice medicine for 10 years prior to joining industry. She earned her MD from Southern Illinois University of Medicine, a bachelor's in biology from Illinois University, and an MBA from Indiana Wesleyan University. Since leaving clinical practice, she has accumulated over 20 years of experience developing therapeutics across multiple indications in the biopharmaceutical industry. And we are so pleased to have her here today to talk about Aeglea's clinical trial for classical homocystinuria. Linda, can you tell me a little bit about Aeglea and your clinical program for HCU?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Danae, thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you today and talk about our program. The company is totally focused on developing human enzyme therapeutics to benefit people who have rare metabolic diseases. So right now, our primary focus is on HCU. We currently have a phase 1/2 program across both the US, the UK, and Australia. And the study is designed to determine what the optimal dose is for lowering total homocysteine levels, evaluating both safety and efficacy. So last year, we announced that 2 patients had gotten to the 3rd dose level, and then we're planning to enroll about 4 patients per cohort. So we still have 2 more patients to enroll. Once that cohort is complete, then we'll look at the effect of the drug and decide whether we should enroll another cohort at a different dose level or whether we can start moving to the next stage of development for pegtarbiliase.
Excellent. And what type of treatment is this?
So our drug is called pegtarbiliase, and it's an enzyme therapy. So it's designed, like I said, to lower total homocysteine levels. And just to give a sense, enzymes are proteins that occur normally in the body, and they're used over and over and over in the body to break down other proteins like homocysteine, for example. There are many other enzymes that are out there to treat metabolic conditions, but pegtarbiliase has the potential to be the very first enzyme that is used to treat patients with classical homocystinuria. So like I said, it's being currently evaluated in our phase 1 trial. It's a once weekly subcutaneous injection. So it's not a pill, it's not an oral therapy, it's not an infusion or an IV therapy, and it's not a gene therapy. So it's an enzyme therapy. So currently it's like I said, it's in clinical trials. It hasn't been approved by any health authorities, and until such time, it's called an investigational therapy.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the criteria for qualification in the study?
Yes. So to be eligible for our study, depending on what amendment you're under, you have to have a total homocysteine level of at least 50 micromolar, and then a documentation of a history at some point in your previous time after you've been diagnosed with at least 80 micromolar or higher. So in the US, patients need to be 18, as well as and there may be some local differences in the UK and also Australia as well. And if folks want to, they can go to clinicaltrials.gov, where it lists out all the inclusion, which are things that you have to meet in order to be part of the trial, and then exclusion, which you cannot meet in order to be included in the trial.
Okay, so I'm going to pause here because we actually have a question already. And awesome. The question, just to clarify, because I'm going to type the response here, it says, at some stage, can you confirm if this trial would be available to children under 18? If so, what age? And B, Australia. So I think from our previous conversations that we had, you had said Australia is included. And if I recall it, I think their age is 12. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's different based on different sites. And so, we just have to talk to the different sites. on what, so it may be adults, in one site. There may be other restrictions on children, so children may not be able to participate depending on the site.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so that question has been answered. Please keep them coming. All right, so my next question for you is, so after they've, fit the criteria, can you tell us what is required of the patient who is participating in the study?
Sure. So after a patient decides that they want to be, in the study, so then they have to go through a screening period. And during that screening period of time, then various labs are taken. Obviously, before any of this stuff, a consent has to be obtained. So there's a consent form that explains the trial in great detail, the number of visits, what's going to happen at each visit, labs and other, assessments, ECGs, blood pressure, things like that. And then during the course of the trial, in our current cohorts, patients are given 4 weekly subcutaneous doses. So on the first visit where you're going to receive the drug, you'll have some blood tests taken and then the subcutaneous injection. And then you'll be watched for a period of time to make sure that you don't have any reactions to the drug. And then we have a couple of visits. The first visit where it's very intense in terms of trying to get the concentrations of the drug as well as the effect of the drug. So the concentrations are known as pharmacokinetics. And what happens to the body as a result of the drug are the pharmacodynamics. And that's really what we're looking at in terms of the total homocysteine levels. So there'll be a period of time where multiple blood tests are taken over the periods of after the first injection is given during that first week. And then you're given the second injection. So that's week 2. Watched in the clinic for a period of time, additional blood tests taken. And then the next week is week 3. Then you're given an additional injection, blood tests are taken before the drug is given, and then afterwards. And then week 4 is very much like the first week where there's sort of intense blood tests taken over the course of the time period before and after dosing for about a week. And then when all the dosing is done, then we watch patients for any side effects from the medicine for a period of 30 days or so, unless they have development of anti-drug antibodies. So if you develop an immune response to the drug, then we want to keep watching the patients to make sure that no other side effects happen as a result of those developments.
Here. One of our questions is, are there any known risk factors yet regarding the drug?
So risk factors or side effects?
I'm interpreting as side effects.
That's what I thought. Sure. So, I mean, as with any biologic, there are certain types of side effects that can occur. And the biggest one is, especially because we're giving it subcutaneously, are injection site reactions. And so those, are things that we would watch for. In particular, again, anti-drug antibodies are things that can happen and can cause people to have these injection site reactions or hypersensitivity reactions, where you might get an itchy throat or difficulty breathing or wheezing or rash or things like that. Again, those are common with biologics, particularly if they're given subcutaneous. So those are the biggest things that we're watching for.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for clarifying that. And is there any component of the study that is done at home, or is it all done in the clinic? Can you tell us about where the study is taking place?
So the screening process, that's at least a visit. It might be more visits depending on, the practice of the investigative site. And then the dosing of the drug will be given at the site. There may be, depending on each individual site, there may be the ability to get some of the assessments done at home through home health. But that's, again, by each individual site's practice.
Okay. And I have a note here, sorry. Can you walk me through what the visits during the trial would look like? I think you talked a little bit about what the total number of visits is. Just, are you able to expand on that any bit more?
I mean, just like I said, the first visit is probably the longest in terms of duration, because we want to watch patients for a period of time just to make sure it's their first dose, that they don't have any particular side effects or reactions to the dose. And then after that, it's a little bit shorter. But there is that intense sort of PK and PD sampling over the first week and the fourth week, where we're getting those extra blood tests just to see what's happening inside the body with the drug concentration, as well as inside the body on the homocysteine levels. So again, you have the screening visit, at least one, and then there'll be 4 dosing visits where blood tests are being taken, and then the drug is being administered, and then at least 1 visit 30 days after all of the drug doses are over, just to do that final safety check and make sure that hasn't been any other side effects that have been happening over the course of the drug. So it is, as with all phase 1s, it's a big commitment for patients. So no question about it, lots of visits, lots of time at the site. So we understand that, which, it makes it difficult for patients to participate. But we know we've had a lot of patients who are doing this sort of for selfless reasons. They know that this runs in their family, and they want to help, companies try to develop these medicines, not only for them, but then for other people in their families as well.
Okay. And if this did move into needing a 4th cohort, would that look the same, or how would that differ?
So we designed the protocol with a lot of flexibility and a lot of optionality. So based on the results that we get from the cohort 3, then we'll determine what the dose level is, as well as what the duration of that next cohort will be. So I wish I had my crystal ball to tell you today what that's going to be, but we don't really know yet until we get the final data from our remaining patients in the cohort.
All right. And then I know we briefly touched on the study sites. Can you touch base on those one more time? Are there multiple sites in the United States, or is there just one? And where else are we looking at?
Yeah, so right now there's a single site open in the US, and that's in Dallas. And so we are looking at some other sites right now. And, that may or may pan out. They may or may not want to participate or be able to participate or have patients. So I don't want to sort of talk about those sites yet until for sure we know that they're going to participate. But we are looking at other sites in the US at the very moment.
Okay, so I have 2 questions here, which kind of help me pull into my next one here. So I'm going to ask my question and then attach theirs, just
Sure.
so I can click the buttons that go with it. It says, I don't live in the area. Can I still participate? And one person's asking if there will be clinical trial sites in Canada. And is there, obviously, I think I know the answer, but if you could just reiterate, do you know if there will be a site potentially in Arizona? If you could answer both of those in conjunction with the question, if you don't live in Dallas, can you still participate?
So absolutely, patients do not need to live in Dallas. So on a case-by-case basis, we'll evaluate each patient, and there's the ability for us to reimburse for transportation and food and things like that over the course of the trial. So not living in the area should not be a barrier in and of itself to participating in the trial. Right now, we're not looking at any sites in Canada, but there is the possibility, again, of patients coming down. The only difficulty, and this is, one of those things, is, obtaining a visa and then being here long enough within the visa to be able to stay long enough for the trial, So both the screening period, the treatment period, and then the follow-up period thereafter. And then, you know, a big sort of key thing is for people outside the US is, you know, their health insurance. And while the study-related costs are all taken care of by Aeglea, if for some reason or another, you know, somebody broke their leg or they needed, you know, some medical care outside the course of the trial, then, you know, ex-US medical insurance may not apply. So that's just another thing to sort of think about as folks are thinking about participating in the trial outside the US.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I hope that answers the questions for our folks in attendance from Canada. I know we have a couple. You know, there are a lot of patients who do want to participate, jobs, school, children, it all gets kind of hairy. So for the college student that would like to participate but has classes going on, are there steps that can be made to make it more likely for them to potentially participate in the study and still attend their university classes?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, if there's a desire to do that, then that's something that can be discussed with the site to see if there's enough flexibility that they can work out to enable participation from college students or working adults or, you know, even school age kids to participate.
Excellent, because I know there's quite a few of them that would like to, and it's just trying to get all the pieces lined up. Are you able to, is there protocol differences between the US, Australia, and the UK outside of, I know you mentioned, you know, the home health part. Is there anything else that might differ?
So other than that, I mean, the protocols are the same. So the assessments are the same, you know, what we're collecting is the same, the eligibility is the same, you know, except for the age, you know, and local differences there. But other than that, it's the same. So we're trying to collect the same information and be uniform across each and every patient that participates in our trial.
I think that's a good point that you just made, that it has to be uniform because, you know, you can't have different data points depending on the location. It has to be even, for lack of a better word there. I want to pause before I go on to my last question here. Liz, were there any questions?
Yeah, we had one come in from Facebook. She says, my son is 16 in Australia and he was going to be a part of it, but his levels, which had previously been 172, came back on the screening as 60, which meant he didn't meet the criteria. So you talk about the criteria, the minimum, and then, so maybe you could readdress that because she is wondering if, what did she say? Then she poses a question, could the labs have been accurate? But that is definitely always a question.
I guess the other question is could they reapply? Because maybe the criteria was different when they applied. Because I think you mentioned 50, if I...
Yeah, so, you know, if folks are not necessarily familiar with protocol, so every time a company decides they want to do something different, so they want to change the eligibility criteria or they want to collect more information, then we do what is called a protocol amendment. And those have to go through the local ethics committees at each institution as well as the health authorities in the country. And so that takes a little time. So sometimes we end up with sites, even within a country, you know, on different protocol amendments at the same time because of those, you know, delays in going through those regulatory processes. So that can certainly happen. What I will say is our understanding is that the total homocysteine values can be wildly different even within the same patients. So it's very dependent on obviously what you've eaten, you know, in the last 24 to 48 hours, if they're taking, you know, or not taking their pyridoxine, if they're taking betaine, what time they took the betaine relative to the time that the total homocysteine levels were taken. And then also not only what they ate, but when they ate, relative to the time that the total homocysteine levels were drawn. So there's a lot of factors. There's also diurnal variation in the body. And this is well documented in the literature that this can happen to patients. So if you look at the, ever look at papers written on homocystinuria, you can see these wide, variations of values for patients if they're taken, in a longitudinal way over a period of time from that same patient. So it's not surprising to me to see this happen to a patient, to see these levels, range quite a bit different from day to day.
And then the last question I think I posed as part of that was, can they reapply even if they had applied to participate previously?
Yeah, so patients who are screen failures can certainly rescreen if the investigator believes there's a reasonable chance for them to screen in. Okay.
Yeah. We get excited when our levels are lower, but also we know sometimes those are flukes, and we wish they would stay that way, but maybe that 170 is probably closer to the realistic range. So it is always so hard to know the cause behind some of these levels, as you had indicated. Then I guess if I don't see any, hold on. Sorry, I have a question that's a question. But I have one other question. I have a couple of questions here, and then I'll go into my last question. This has been a great conversation helping understand, what the trial looks like. Can you please confirm exactly how you find the sites in Australia? This person is a teenager. So maybe what we can do is in our follow-up, because is it clinicaltrials.gov that has it? So Liz, I don't know if you're able to pull up the clinicaltrials.gov website for homocystinuria. If not, we can follow up with this individual. But if Liz will reply to the answer directly to this patient. But if for those who are listening, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov and then type in homocystinuria, it should bring up all the current clinical trials that are currently happening. And then this one should be listed. I don't know right offhand, unless if you do, Dr. Neuman, how it's going to be shared, but it should be pretty clear which one it is. And it lists they all will list all the different sites that they have. So, and I believe that's the only clinical trial currently happening in Australia for homocystinuria. So, can you tell us what is next, and what can you tell us about phase 3?
Sure. So, we need to look at the data that we're seeing, in our current cohort, and then we'll evaluate it and decide, what is the best plan of action going forward. So we plan to move into phase 3 if the data supports that, and we get the support from the health authorities as well. So, that's the plan. I think that's what the company has said, publicly, that's the plan for us. But again, this is all dependent on the data being supportive of us, getting total homocysteine levels down to the level that they need to be, and the health authorities believing that we've done everything that we need to do to move into the next phase of development.
Okay, that sounds great. I don't see any new questions. I'll check one more time with Liz.
Nope, no new questions on Facebook.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Neuman, so much for your time this afternoon. And for those who attended, we have patients and parents from all over the globe in attendance. So I thank you guys taking time out of your evenings, and for our friends in Australia, their mornings, and just joining us for this great conversation. If you do have any questions, please reach out to info@hcunetworkamerica.org. But again, thank you so much, Dr. Neuman, for your time this afternoon. And we can't wait to see the results and what the future holds for Aeglea's program for classical HCU. Thank you so much.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you.